realize how difficult it is for seniors who are aging alone without family to rely on to find the resources and the people they need to support them. So as a result of that, I started another project, which it was creating a website called soloallies.com to help seniors who are aging alone find those resources and the tools they need to get organized, plan, and prepare for their future. So I have been involved, as I mentioned, with solo seniors for my entire career. When I first started out as a lawyer, I was frequently appointed by judges to serve as the guardian and conservator for people who were in crisis and who did not have either the legal planning documents that they needed, or they didn't have, or the people that they chose weren't able to be there for them. So I know what it's like to be the one to show up in the hospital, to introduce myself to somebody as their guardian. And I'm going to share some of those stories with you today. Along the way, I've also had many of my clients realize that they were a solo ager who needed support and recognize that they didn't have the people that they needed to rely on, and ask me if they could put me in the important roles of healthcare proxy, power of attorney, personal representative of their estate, and executor and trustee. So I've had that experience. And then I've also been appointed, I was appointed by Governor Deval Patrick when he was in office, which seems like it was a really long time ago now. It's probably, 15 years ago, to serve as a public administrator for Suffolk County. And what that job entails is that when there is somebody who dies who didn't have any family, there's only a handful of attorneys that are authorized to handle their estates. So I was one of 5 attorneys in Suffolk County who could do that. So I know what it's like to step in after somebody dies and try to find heirs and piece together their life and take care of things and administer that. So that's really a road that nobody should go down, and I hope none of you ever do. But today, really, the focus is more just on the healthcare proxy and the power of attorney. So it's not so much about after death, what happens after death. It's more about let's plan for your life so that you have a good life, and if you ever do have a crisis or need help, that you are going to have people show up who you can rely on, who will be prepared to step in and help you. So I feel like there's a common theme, and I think if I want to simplify this as much as I can, it comes down to 2 pieces. And it's planning, which would include legal documents and getting organized, and it's people. You need people who will show up and be there for you if you have a crisis or an emergency. And if you have one but you don't have the other, that's going to be a problem. But if you have both, you're going to have peace of mind and you're going to be prepared. So I like to come back to this theme of planning and people equals peace of mind. So I'll start out by sharing one of the stories with you of a man that I was appointed to serve as his guardian and conservator. And just so you know, I've always changed the person's name, and for the most part, most of the facts I'll tell you are true, but occasionally I'll change a fact, so I'm not going to reveal somebody's identity to everybody here. But so this man, Tom, I was appointed as his guardian and conservator, and he had mild dementia. Really, he seemed like he was fairly sharp guy to have a guardian appointed for him. But he was sent to the hospital because he slipped on the ice and he fell. And the hospital took care of him for a couple days and then sent him home. And he lived in an apartment building in Cambridge. And he was a solo ager, and he didn't have any support. And when they sent him home, he didn't even want to go home. He sat on the steps of his apartment building, and he was found crying. His neighbors found him there. He had been there for a few hours. So they called the police, and he was taken back to the hospital. And once he got back to the hospital realized, okay, this guy cannot make it on his own, and we need to do something about it. So they went to court, and they asked the judge to appoint somebody to help him, to be his guardian, to make medical decisions for him and figure out where he should live, and to become his conservator to handle his finances. And so the judge chose me, and I met Tom in the hospital, and he had been there for a while because the process of getting a guardian or a conservator takes a while. It can take 2 months before anybody shows up. So when I met him, he was like in a hospital Johnny, and I think he had been in that for like 2 months. He hadn't had his clothes the whole time. And he was very relieved to meet me. He was a smart man. He went to an Ivy League school. He had an excellent career, and he had lots of interesting stories from his career. But he was an only child, and he had he just didn't have family to count on, and he never did planning. So I helped Tom. He did not want to go home. I helped him move to an assisted living facility where he lived for a few years, and he was really pretty content there. And as part of my job of being guardian is I went into his apartment, and I decided what should happen to all of his things. He had a lot of books. He loved to read. And I had to figure out, who Tom was, what assets Tom had, and how I could help him. So we went down a journey together for probably about 4 years before his health started failing. And Tom eventually went to the hospital, and he needed end-of-life care. And when you have a guardian, the default is that they are going to do everything possible to keep you alive, and they have to hook you up to every machine possible, unless the guardian goes to court and asks the judge for permission to keep you comfortable and put you on hospice care and do that. So I had to go to court for Tom and help him get off a ventilator and things like that, so he wasn't subjected to a prolonged life where there was no quality of life. So that's just an example of, what can happen to people who don't have a plan, and really what I hope never happens to any of you. And I think one thing I really take away from Tom's story is he was smart. He was really smart. And he did have some money. He wasn't broke. So I mean, it's not like this just happens to people who aren't smart. Okay, so I told you a little bit about guardianship, but I'll just tell you a little bit more about guardianship. If you do not have a healthcare proxy document in place, and you are in the hospital and you can't communicate your wishes, then the hospital will go to court and seek the appointment of a guardian. So even if you have a spouse, your spouse cannot make those decisions unless there's a healthcare proxy. So in our office, we've had to represent plenty of spouses in guardianship petitions. So the healthcare proxy is really important, and we'll talk about that. But even if you have the advance directive, even if you have the 5 wishes document, even if you have all of that, that's helpful, but if you don't have the healthcare proxy, you will still need a guardianship. And what happens with guardianship is the court intervenes. The process takes a while, so you could get stuck in the hospital, while a guardian gets appointed for you. You could very likely have a stranger appointed as guardian for you, and I know I've been that stranger many times. Or, it could be a family member. I think in Massachusetts, the preference would be for a family member if there's a family member who's willing and able to step up, but that's not always the case for people. And then the other thing is that the default for people on guardianship is that they will get every medical intervention possible to keep them alive. So ventilator, feeding tube, whatever it takes to keep somebody alive, even if the quality of life is gone. So it's much better to, have your plan and to avoid guardianship. That's really, we're all trying to avoid guardianship. And so I can just tell you from my perspective, it's really hard to be that stranger who shows up in the hospital room and introduces yourself to somebody and says, "Hi, I'm your guardian." First of all, I feel really just sorry. I feel very sorry that they're in that situation. And I'm then in a position where I don't know this person at all. Like I have no idea who they were, what mattered to them in their life. I get so little information about them if I'm appointed as guardian. All I get is really a medical certificate from a doctor where I read about their medical condition, and I can read like the medical record. But there's usually very little information in there, like who are their friends, like do they like their neighbors? Because one thing that happens almost every time that I've been appointed as guardian, when I go to their apartment or I go to their home, their neighbors come out, like they come out of the woodwork, and they all want to talk to me. And I'm very careful about what I say, because who knows if they even like their neighbors. But it's hard to know. There's always these people that show up and say, "Oh, I'm a friend, I'm a neighbor." And for the most part, I'll talk to them a little bit, but not too much. I'm a little cautious. And again, I think the other hard part is that when as the guardian, I don't know what their wishes were, and sometimes it's hard to watch somebody have to have aggressive measures taken to keep them alive when they have absolutely zero quality of life. So at that point, then I usually will go to court to get the authority to make somebody do not resuscitate, or to remove ventilation so that they can go on hospice and have comfort care. And if I go to court to ask for that authority, the court appoints an independent lawyer who they call a guardian ad litem to kind of investigate and meet the person and make sure and stand in their shoes and kind of say, what would they want? Like, what would they decide? Also, as a guardian, you have to get extra authority from the court to admit to a nursing home or to treat with antipsychotic medication, because all of those things are, very invasive, and we want to make sure that it's what the person needs. And I'm not one to, I'll try to keep somebody out of the nursing home at all costs. I don't want somebody to go on antipsychotic medication, but occasionally, sometimes that's the situation we're in. So every time a guardian has to go to court to get special permission to do things, it's a whole legal proceeding. And at the end of the day, if the person has any funds, that the person is paying for all of these court proceedings and everything. So it gets very expensive for them. And conservatorship is a term that is used to describe somebody who's appointed to take care of your financial affairs. Okay, so guardianship, the guardian is really only appointed to make medical decisions, figure out where help you figure out where you should live, decisions along those lines, but they don't deal with your finances at all. So typically, I have been appointed as both. Whenever a judge has appointed me, they want me to be the guardian and the conservator, but occasionally it will be separate people. And the conservator, if you do not have a power of attorney document, the conservator will come in and they will try to figure out what you own, because they are given zero information about what you own. And sometimes, I know in my experience as conservator, sometimes you walk into an apartment or a house and you would think you would find a file cabinet that would have all the important information in it, but you don't find that at all. You just find a big mess, basically, and you're in charge of it. I've also been appointed on a number of hoarding cases where the house was actually condemned by the Board of Health, and nobody could even really go into the house or touch the papers too much. So, in those cases, it becomes a wild goose chase trying to figure out. You become an investigator, just trying to figure out what somebody has, what they own, and what their assets are. So ideally, you really want to avoid conservatorship by having a power of attorney. And I think that's important to say, no one can pay for your care, because that gets really, like if you're in the hospital, it takes a little while once you're even appointed as conservator to just even figure out what this person can afford in terms of care. So it can result in them staying in the hospital even once you get appointed, which resulted in a delay already of maybe 2 months. It might take me another few weeks to just even understand what assets they have, and the hospital is trying to rush people out the door. So sometimes it's a balancing act of trying to understand the hospital's rushing them out the door, but I also want to try to get them in the best place they can afford to. So, yes, I was just talking jumped ahead a little bit about the challenges of being a conservator. It is a scavenger hunt. You are searching through somebody's home. If I try to put myself in somebody's shoes and think the last time they left this apartment, they never knew it was going to be the last time they left. And they never thought that, some lawyer was going to show up with her assistants and start, rifling through everything in their house trying to figure out what they owned. So, but that's basically what the job entails. So, and one spot I usually start with, if you're ever appointed for somebody in a fiduciary capacity and you're not sure where to start, sometimes the IRS is the best place to start, because they have the records and they can give you the 1099s and the W-2. You can learn a lot from the IRS about somebody. You can learn a lot about them from their mail. But sometimes there's surprises along the way that you never expect. So I also find that managing someone's home is a big job. There's a lot of things to think about when you're in charge of managing somebody's house. I think we all are used to just kind of managing our own house, but then all of a sudden we got to manage somebody else's house, and it's like a different game, because if the house is vacant, you really need to get vacant property insurance. A homeowner's insurance policy will, almost all homeowners insurance policies have in them that if the house is vacant for more than 30 days, that the policy won't cover the house. So there's a lot to think about there, and you want to always make sure that house is safe and protected. And sometimes it involves selling the house. I've been involved in quite a few sales of homes. I always need to get permission from the court to sell a house. There's a lot of extra hoops we have to jump through. And even just maintaining the house is a lot of work. Is there oil in the tank? Is there heat? If it snows, who's going to go over there and shovel? So these are the things that hopefully we can all avoid. But I just wanted to share with you what happens if you don't plan. And I'll just share another quick story with you. I was appointed as guardian and conservator for a 96-year-old man who lived in Boston, and he would ride his bike every day to a soup kitchen for lunch. And he didn't show up for a few days, and they were worried about him, so they called the police. The police came in and did a wellness check. His house was in the worst condition you could imagine. He was a hoarder, and there was a tunnel that you had to crawl through to get into his house. So it was condemned by the Board of Health. I don't know why. I was a lot younger then. I don't know why, but I went into the house because I felt like I had to see it. And so I had to put on a Tyvek suit and booties and a hat, and they suited me up to go in. And I got in for maybe 30 seconds, and I just couldn't handle it. It was like disgusting, so I just ran out of there. But so, we had to hire a whole clean out crew that was used to dealing with like really toxic cleanups. And I think that cleanup alone was like $30,000 for that house. But basically, this man, I really enjoyed working with him. He was a super sweet man. He was very kind and very pleasant. He moved to an assisted living. He was perfectly happy there. I think he ate better than he ever had when he was there. But he even had a son that he had been estranged from since the son was just a baby. And I found the son. I reunited the son and the father. So it was actually a happy ending in many ways. But one thing that I found about the house that was super interesting was the neighbor. It's always the neighbor. The neighbor came to talk to me one day and said, "Do you know he's got a house in New Hampshire?" I said, "Really?" So I asked him about it because he was able to have conversations with me. It was very pleasant. I said, "Do you have a house in New Hampshire?" He said, "Yes, that sounds familiar. Do you know where it is?" "I don't recall." So we went on we did a title search, and we found the house. It was in Lake Winnipesaukee, and it was the only business trip that I think I've ever gone in my life, because usually we just kind of stay local, But I brought my husband with me because I didn't know what I was going to find. So he came with me, and there was a neighbor up there who knew the house had basically been abandoned. And I don't think that this man had been up to that house in 15 years. Somehow the neighbor knew how to get into the house, so he let us in. And there was a raccoon family living in there. There was a widow's walk type thing in the house, and my husband went up there and he heard a growl, and we basically went running out of the house. I mean, it was wild, So, but we found the house, and we were able to sell the house and use it to pay for this man's needs. It actually turned out that this man who went to the soup kitchen every day had a whole lot of money. And and because he had reunited with his son, and this man was going to face estate taxes, he had so much money that we were actually able to get a court order to give some of that money to the son, who was semi-disabled and actually really appreciated some of it. And but this man had everything he needed for the rest of his life. He was perfectly happy, and it was interesting. I really enjoyed it. But we all want to avoid that, right? You don't want a total stranger going on wild goose chases for you. So, as much as I feel like I understand the challenges of being the guardian or being the conservator, I can't imagine the challenges of being that person who's in the boat, who's in the hospital bed, and who's lost all control over their life, who can't leave who wonders why they've been stuck in the hospital for 2 months, who wonders where their clothes are and why won't anybody just bring them their clothes. And sometimes I know for whatever reason, like the man whose house was condemned by the Board of Health, sometimes I'm not actually able to really get their clothes. So then it's trying to figure out somebody's size when you don't know them, And I'm not the one who goes shopping. We have assistants in our office that will order things off of Amazon or something. We try to be efficient about things, but there's all kinds of little things you don't think about. And I think none of us want to be in a position where we find ourselves out of control, not in our own clothes, you're already sick or in the hospital, so it's really hard. And, what is this costing me? It's actually costing you a lot of money because you got stuck in the hospital longer than you thought you would be there, so your medical bills are a lot, and you're paying for all of the legal procedures. If you have money, it's all coming out of your pocket. You don't know who is going to be appointed as your guardian. It's really the luck of the draw. I think there's wonderful lawyers out there that get appointed as guardian. I think there's probably terrible lawyers out there that get appointed as guardian. There are, I've seen a guardian's bill of charging $6.50 an hour. There are really crazy cases out there. So you take your chances if you roll the dice and wait for a guardian to show up at your bedside. They worry about, who's taking care of my house, what about my bills, what about my mail, what about my pet? What about, am I ever going to go home? They don't have their glasses. I think we can all imagine, how bad that can be. And so we're going to all try to avoid that by getting ahead of it, right? And making sure that we do this a better way, and that we plan in advance, that we have the legal documents we need to protect us, and that we have the people that are going to show up to be there for us. Because if you have one without the other, you can get stuck in guardianship and conservatorship, which we don't want. So I know you have a lot of lawyers that come in and talk to you, and you probably might already know this stuff, but I'm just going to go through it real fast. Basically, what is a healthcare proxy? It's a legal document where you designate somebody to make medical decisions for you in the event that you cannot communicate your wishes to a doctor. So as long as they can talk to you and you know what's going on, they're going to talk to you. But if for some reason you don't know what's going on or you can't communicate, then they will speak to your healthcare proxy. The doctor decides when you've reached that point where the healthcare proxy needs to get activated. For somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's, they may still be able to communicate their wishes, but they may not really understand what decisions they're making. So that's why the doctor decides. In addition to the healthcare proxy document, you can have some additional documents, but these are never a substitute for the healthcare proxy. If you have any of these extra documents, but you don't have the healthcare proxy, you will still need a guardian. So I think it's hard for solo agers, because if you're trying to plan in advance and do everything you can, these documents are really great and helpful, but sometimes it really just comes down to the people. And if you're not sure if the people you're going to be able to count on the people, that can get tricky, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But right now, these documents really provide guidance to your healthcare proxy. So the first one is called an advance directive, which could also be called a living will, which maybe you've heard of this 5 wishes document. That's just like a brand name for an advance directive, okay? But basically, it's you providing instructions about how you want your healthcare proxy to make decisions under certain circumstances. Like if you are at the end of your life and the prognosis is really poor, you have no quality of life, what kind of medical treatment do you want to receive at that point? I recently had a nurse in my office. He was a really nice man. He had been a nurse. He was a retired nurse. And he summed it up this way. He just said, I don't want to be a veggie. I don't want to be a veggie, And I think that's, if you don't have if you don't have an advance directive, but you tell your healthcare proxy, I don't want to be a veggie. You maybe you wouldn't say it that way. Maybe you'd say it in a more eloquent way. But basically, that says a lot. That sums up a lot. I think what's really hard is that none of us know what's going to happen at the end of our life. We really have no idea. So we don't know what decisions that our healthcare proxy might be faced with, but whatever instructions we can give them, it's going to make it easier for them from an emotional standpoint, if there's somebody who cares a lot about you, it's going to always make it better for them if they thought, oh, well, it's right here in writing, and I know this is what they wanted. A do not resuscitate order is called a DNR order, and usually healthy people really would not have a DNR order in place. It's usually for somebody who's sick or, has Alzheimer's, or is just like maybe really old and frail and just says, I wouldn't want to be resuscitated at this point. But you're saying that if you go into cardiac arrest and the EMTs come to your house or something, or your EMTs come to your house or you're in the hospital, you don't want anybody to give you CPR or put those defibrillators on you or whatever to try to resuscitate you. So then another extra would be something called a MOLST or a POLST. I don't know if you've heard of these before, but this is something you put in place with your doctor, and you talk to your doctor about this, and it's actually a physician's order that has instructions for what kind of treatment you should get, like ventilation, nutrition, hydration, things like this. And it actually becomes a medical order that's part of your medical record. And I believe that is legally binding but again, these are extras, they're not substitutes. I mean, there are plenty of people who have had these documents in place who still needed a guardian. And so just something to keep in mind.
If you have a MOLST or POLST in place, why would you still need the healthcare?
Yes, I'll give you an example. Yep. So the question is, if you have the MOLST or the POLST in place, why would you still need a healthcare proxy? So just to let you know, like in our office, we probably handle 80 guardianship cases a year. I'm not saying I'm not the guardian for those people, but we are involved in guardianship petitions. I don't do that work so much, but one of my colleagues in my office represents one of the hospitals, and he's always in court on guardianship cases. And there are plenty of situations where somebody could still be alive. The POLST and the MOLST really just has to do with, if you go into cardiac arrest, if you can't eat and you will starve without nutrition, but there's plenty of, gray area along the way where somebody could be declining, have like Alzheimer's, dementia, maybe their body hasn't completely failed them yet, and they need medical decisions to be made. They need somebody to figure out where they're going to live. There's all kinds of things that need to happen, and you need a person. You need an actual person in Massachusetts to do that for you. So hope that answers your question. Let me see. Okay. So the healthcare proxy is really super important. The power of attorney is a document that allows you to choose somebody who will help you manage your finances and pay your bills in the event that you cannot do it yourself. Okay. So this is somebody that you really have to trust, and you are giving them a job. It's not necessarily an honor. I know when Marianne talked in the beginning, you don't want to be a burden to somebody. Not to sound mean, but giving somebody the power of attorney is a bit of a burden sometimes. It just really is, because you are asking them to do a lot. You're asking them to go to the bank, and you think it would be easy just to show up at the bank and say, okay, here I am, I'm just going to take over now. It's not just getting the authority from the bank to access that person's account could take you 3 trips to the bank. It doesn't usually take me 3 trips to the bank because I know now who to deal with at the bank or how to get it done. But if you're giving this to a friend and your friend has never done it before, your friend is going to be going down a road that they never thought they would be going down. So, but you have to trust the person. They have a lot of responsibility. They have to think about your taxes. They have to think about your real estate. They have to think about your required minimum distributions on your retirement account. They have to think about so many things that it can be stressful. So we talked about the legal documents that are going to be the foundation for what you need. But really, at the end of the day, you could have the greatest legal documents in the world, and you could have people named in there, but when the time comes, when it's needed, if you're in the hospital and they call up your cousin who lives in Pennsylvania, and she says, I'm not available, it's a bad time, I can't get involved, then you're back in guardianship, okay? So you've got to make sure that the people that you are planning on relying on are going to actually show up and be there for you. And that's really hard. I feel like we live in a world where people have moved around a lot, where families have gotten smaller, where things have changed so much. And it's really actually very hard to be able to rely on people today. So I'll just tell you a story that I feel like shows somebody who planned ahead and really had a solo ager who I worked with, who I really liked a lot. And I'll tell you her story, okay? So her name was Ellen, and she lived in the area, and she had 3 sisters, and they were the tightest sisters ever. And they lived together in a 2-family house, and she was the nicest woman. She took care of each sister. One sister had Alzheimer's, and she took care of her, and then her sister had to go to a nursing home, then the other sister. So each sister, one by one, had all these, things happen at the end of their life where they needed more help, and Ellen was always there for her sisters. And I was Ellen's estate planning lawyer, and I was there for her sisters, and I helped. One of her sisters needed to go to a nursing home. I helped her apply for Medicaid benefits, and I helped protect the house for Ellen, who was the final sister living there, so that the house would be protected from the Medicaid estate recovery. But so Ellen, at one point, realized that she was sort of the last one living in her family. Because none of her sisters, they actually, 3 of them were married, but nobody ever had children. So she knew this was happening, and she said, "Would you please be my person to be there for me?" And I did. And because Ellen planned ahead, she was able to get organized and give me the information. And so nothing really came as like crazy surprise. Ellen's life really went pretty smoothly. She really loved living in her apartment, and she started to decline a little bit. She had dementia toward the end of her life, and so I really tried to keep her in her apartment for as long as I could. I arranged for like private companions to come in, but it was like the middle of February, and her heating system just shut down, and she had to go somewhere. And it was like, okay, well, Ellen, why don't you just try the respite over at this assisted living and see how you like it? So she went there I said, just go for 2 weeks. We can fix the heat, and you can come back. And she went there, and she absolutely loved assisted living. And she did not want to go back to her house. And so it was good. It was really nice, because sometimes I feel like, that's probably the move that I kind of saw making sense for her. But, I wanted to honor her wishes too, and she wanted to be in her apartment. So I was going to honor her wishes and get her private A's and keep that going, for as long as I could. But for her to see, I like assisted living. And she enjoyed it. She had a million friends when she got there. She actually went to an assisted living that had just opened. She was like one of the first 5 residents or something there. So they all knew her. They all loved her. And she was She was like Queen Ellen. And she had some friends. I mean, I knew her friends. Her friends were fantastic. I mean, she had her team. She built a team. We were all there. She had a great life, and she was happy. I mean, I think everything really went well for her. She did decline at the end of her life, and she had a hospice, and they came right into the assisted living, and she I was there for her funeral, and so let's see. So you want to make sure you pick a suitable healthcare proxy, right? Because this is what it all comes down to. If you pick the wrong person, and they get the call that you need them, and they say, "Oh no, sorry, it's a bad time for me," well, that's not going to be good, right? So I'd say you want to get somebody who's available, ready, and willing to be involved, right? And you've got to talk to them about this first. You can't just surprise somebody and be like, "Tag, you're it," because it's like it's too much. It's not that nice to do to somebody, and so they've got to be willing to honor your wishes. At one point, I had my sister down as a backup healthcare proxy. I hope my sister never sees this video. and that Terry Schiavo case was in the news at the time. I don't know if you remember this, but it was a woman who, she was in a horrible condition, and her husband felt like they should take her off of life support and let her die, and the parents wanted to keep her on, and it turned into a legal battle that went on for 7 years, and she lived in a vegetative state for a really long time. And eventually, it was in Florida, I think the courts decided to pull the plug, and so she passed away. But it was, with my sister, it was right around that Terry Schiavo case, and we were talking about it, and my sister said, "Oh, those poor parents. I can't imagine what they were going through." And I mean, everybody's got their own beliefs here, and I have my own beliefs, she has her own beliefs, and I will always honor anyone's beliefs, whatever those are, even if they're not my own. But I thought, oh my gosh, if she's ever my healthcare proxy, she will keep me in a vegetative state for years on end, and she just can't do it. So I love her, but I gotta pick somebody else who I feel like is gonna honor my wishes. So just something to keep in mind. I think ideally you try to pick somebody who's younger. I mean, you may say, "Look, this is who I have," and they are not younger. I would say in that case, maybe if you have friends, maybe like this group here is amazing. Your resources here are amazing. Like and I know Thea's planning on doing a lot of things to connect everybody here together. Look to each other, but try to get a whole bunch, try to have 3 people as alternates or something, because somebody might go to Florida for the winter and not be available, or somebody might be sick themselves or they can't deal with it. Form your group. You could have 6 people down for your healthcare, but you could say, there's only one at a time. You have to put in order. First my friend Mary, then my friend Jane. You would have to talk to all of them, but maybe you form a group and you say, we're going to name each other in this document. I think for the healthcare proxy, it's okay, because the healthcare proxy can always get help from other professionals. The healthcare proxy really could be a more limited role where you're just sort of being the one to say, okay, I'm here, I'm the conduit for this person's wishes. That's really what I'm trying to do, and I can hire professionals. I can hire a geriatric care manager. I can hire a social worker. I can hire aides or companions to come in and do this, a lot of the work. It's still going to be a job. So, but I hope you have people you can pick. But I think if you don't have people you can pick, we got to get creative, and we got to think about ideas about how you can find people, okay? So like a friend, a neighbor, a solo Ager group member, a church member, some geriatric care managers might be willing to do this, social worker. We have an Aging Allies program in our office. I will serve as healthcare proxy for my clients, which most lawyers probably would never do, but I will do it. But I will not just serve as healthcare proxy alone. If somebody calls me up and says, will you just be my healthcare proxy, I won't. It's usually kind of a package deal. The healthcare proxy, power of attorney, and usually handling your estate also. So let's think about a power of attorney, okay? Number one on the characteristics of a suitable power of attorney is trustworthiness. The power of attorney is a license to steal. In the wrong hands, this person can take your money. And we all know in the world we live in today with scams and everything else, it's really scary out there. It's like you can barely even answer your phone these days. So this job is harder to fill. It is basically a part-time job that you would be giving somebody. This person that you pick has to be pretty sharp. Like they have to be somebody who's not just going to let the bills pile up and ignore your house and pretend like they don't have to do anything. Like there's actually a whole lot that needs to be done. So I would say when you put this person down in your documents, you want to check in with them. You want to ask them. If you put them down in the documents, you want to ask them, I put you down in my documents. Do you think you can actually help me with this? And then every year, you want to check in with that person. And you want to say, are you still up for this job? And you want to have a backup, too. So they could live sort of far away. I would say they can't live too far away. But there's a lot of things, technology today with the bank, there are things people can do remotely, right? They can set up online bill pay, the power of attorney can hire other people to assist them too. So hopefully, they can outsource some of these jobs. They could hire like a property manager to take care of your house or things like that. I personally think asking a friend to be a power of attorney is a lot. Maybe it's okay. Maybe your friend says, look, I'm a solo ager too. I get it. We're in the same boat. I've got this. Don't worry about it, But I think you should have a backup to them. Like if you want to pick your friend and your friend says they're up to it and you trust your friend and they meet all these requirements, pick your friend. But give your friend an out if it gets to be too much for them. Get a professional fiduciary as the backup. So if your friend says, I'm done, I can't do this anymore, they can turn it over to the professional.
Can you have two non-professionals?
You can have, you don't need a professional. You can usually
One here and one in another state?
Yes, you can have, so the question was, can you have two non-professionals? Usually, most people, when they're picking their power of attorney, are picking like a non-professional for the most part. I think actually when people come into my office to do estate planning, they sort of treat it like it's an honor. And even some children, I think, say there's like 5 kids in a family and one kid gets the power of attorney job and they don't get it. They feel kind of slighted, like, oh, why didn't I get picked? But it's like, oh, you maybe dodged a bullet on that one. And I think the family member feels like, well, I don't want her to feel left out, that I didn't pick her as the power of attorney, But you gotta go beyond that and think, are you the right person for this job? It's not just about, I like you, so here you go, So I'd say that a lot of lawyers are probably willing to serve in this job. They'll charge you for their time, but lawyers are much more comfortable serving as the power of attorney, or there are, professional fiduciaries out there but the only problem with that is they do have to pay the people for their time. So again, if you can come up with creative ideas, but I do worry about, it's good to be creative, but when you're talking about your finances and protecting your money and your assets, you don't want to be too creative because you don't want to find out that you pick somebody who is going to do a terrible job, or even worse, steal from you, Like a neighbor that you don't really know that well, I would say no. Like I wouldn't put a neighbor in this job, ever. But I would put maybe, if you have a great neighbor who you really like and you want them to be your healthcare proxy, I think that's fine. But this is a lot more than that. Okay, so I'll tell you this story. We'll call her Karen, but okay, yep, okay. Okay, sure. Like 5 minutes? Okay, yeah, I'll just speed it up real quick. Basically, I had a woman call my office recently, and she was completely overwhelmed. Her friend named her as healthcare proxy power of attorney, didn't tell her that she put her in these roles. This lady was like, I don't want this job. I've got too much going on in my own life. I'm sick. My husband's sick. There's a house. There's mice in the house. I don't know what to do. She doesn't want the job. And I didn't draft these legal documents. Somebody else did. But there really are not a whole lot of outs for this woman. So it looks like it's going to end in a conservatorship and a guardianship. A conservatorship. And the healthcare proxy didn't want the job either. So, check with the people first, basically. Moral of the story, it's good to have a plan. If you have a plan, you make your wishes known. There's no need for guessing, wild goose chase, no delays. You choose who's in charge. You stay in control. You feel supported. Your wishes are honored. That's what we're trying to do. What stops people from planning? They always think they have time. I'll get to that before that happens, but it doesn't always work that way. They don't know how bad it can get. I mean, hopefully today you guys learned a little bit how bad it can get. What will it matter if I'm dead? You may not be dead. You might be alive. You don't have anybody to count on. It's too expensive. You don't want to think about it. Too many decisions. This is really important. In case of emergency plan, you could have these documents and you could have these people, but if the people don't know, if nobody knows that you have the documents or where they are, you could still find yourself in guardianship or conservatorship. You need in case of an emergency plan, you need to get all this stuff organized, put it on your fridge. Somebody's got to know that you've got this stuff, okay? Give a copy of your healthcare proxy to your doctor. Ask the doctor to make it part of your medical record. If you land in a hospital, they will know right away who to call, okay? I think that's the biggest thing. I'm down in these roles for people, and I always say, well, who's going to know to call me? Make sure somebody's going to call me if you need me. Okay, who's on your team? Right now, you are the boss, and you're in charge, and you're able to build that team yourself. But what happens if you can't be the boss anymore? Who's going to be the captain of the team? Is it going to be a lawyer? Is it going to be a friend, family member, a geriatric care manager? Who's it going to be? So let's figure that out now. There are professionals. Okay, so what do you do if you don't have anybody? It's really, really hard to find a professional willing to be a healthcare proxy. I'm sorry to say. I hope this changes. I think that there needs to be something done to address this. One of the biggest problems in Massachusetts is that Massachusetts requires the healthcare proxy be a person. It cannot be a company. So like my company cannot be the healthcare proxy. I am the healthcare proxy for people. It's me. And the backup is like another attorney in my office, and then the other backup is the other attorney in my office, okay? So, but until that changes, I think professionals are really leery of being the healthcare proxy for somebody because it's just a lot, And power of attorney, I think lawyers are often willing to do it. I would never make a financial advisor your power of attorney. It should be separate, okay? So through my law firm, Senior Solutions, we have a program called the Aging Allies Program. And I feel like through all my experience in the past 25 years, I've had this common theme of solo agers who need support. And just in the past couple years, I said, well, I have to give a name to this program so people can find me. And maybe that's how Mary Ann found me. And it's called the Aging Allies Program. And it says, the whole point is basically, this is a quote from a solo ager, basically you just want to make sure that somebody is ready and somebody has your information, somebody has the documents, somebody's going to show up, somebody's going to be there. And the whole point of the Aging Allies Program is that in our office we're willing to do that for people. We're willing to be the ones who are prepared, ready. We want to get to know you. We want to know who you are. We want to have all that information we need. And then when you need us, we're ready, okay? And to me, what that means is at a minimum, we meet once a year, okay? Because for a while, people would put me down in their documents and important roles, and then I would go through my files and I'd realize, gee, I haven't talked to George in 5 years. I wonder how he's doing. Haven't heard anything, so I think he's fine. But then I realized, wait a minute, if I'm going to be in these documents, I'm going to be in charge. George and I have to stay in touch at least once a year. You go to see your doctor once a year. If you're going to put me down to be the one to show up at the hospital or to be there at your deathbed, I need to stay in touch with you once a year. So, and then, Senior Solutions, Attorneys at Law, these are some of my colleagues here with me, David and Amy. They're both lawyers in my office. We are focused on planning, plus people equals peace of mind. We are willing to serve as the fiduciaries, which is pretty rare to find, and we establish a relationship with you. Okay, if you don't have much money, I'd say connect with each other. Like that would be a big thing. Try to be creative, and also keep your eyes on Medicaid and the programs that Medicaid can provide for you. There's a lot of programs to help people stay at home, and you might want to even meet with, even though it seems like you don't have much money, why would you meet with an elder law attorney? An elder law attorney can map out a plan for you for protecting and preserving your assets for the long haul, okay? Or, if you can afford long-term care insurance, but that's really expensive too. What is soloallies.com? So I think I mentioned it. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, connect with other solo agers. Yes, connect with, you are a talented group. You guys have skills and your, talents, and you can help each other. And so find each other. I know it's maybe feels like a little awkward, but give it a shot. I don't know. See how it goes. I think this is like, yeah, I have come up with that idea of you get a group and then you pool your resources and you say, okay, we're going to hire, you could call me if you want, or you could call another lawyer, okay? We're going to hire Kathy, and she's going to meet with us once a year and make sure we have everything we need. And you know what? If we all put ourselves down as healthcare proxy, and we need the fifth healthcare proxy on the list, it could be Kathy. Like that, we could be creative about stuff, okay? And it doesn't have to be me too. If there's somebody else you can find, go for it. What is soloallies.com? So I kind of went down a rabbit hole last summer when I started writing this book with the planning for the solo agers. And while I was writing the book, I just thought, well, I keep telling everybody that they need to have these documents in place, they need to have the people, but what if they don't have the people? Where are they going to find the people? And so I thought, well, I'll create a website and I will try to put together a directory of professional fiduciaries for people. The problem is there are so few that I've kind of had to change the focus of the website, because in Massachusetts, I probably only know about 5 people that can be that are willing to be professional fiduciaries for people. And so I kind of had to switch the focus a little bit on the website. In other states it's different. California has a licensed fiduciary program, Arizona, Oregon. That's where we need to head. that's where Massachusetts needs to go, and I hope we do. But for now, we're not there, and honestly, we're kind of in no man's land here, which is unusual for Massachusetts, because I feel like we're usually ahead of things. But, and so this is something, your group, I'm a member of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. We have an advocacy group. I'm going to try to bring this to their attention, because there needs to be a lot of changes and advocacy on behalf of that. So basically, because I had to change the focus of the website, I've changed it to, unfortunately, you're not going to go to the website and find a whole list of amazing fiduciaries that you can just pick from, because I struggle finding them. So I don't know, it's going to be hard for you guys to find them. But we do know some, and we can help connect you with some. So we've kind of changed it more to like a coaching thing, and also helping you make sure you have the tools and the legal documents you need. So there's a bunch of free resources on Solo Allies. Even though I'm working on writing the book and I'm almost finished, there's like a 12-page ebook that you can download. Rachel actually has an example of it over at the table if you want to read it. But it's free, and it just kind of walks you through. I kind of boiled it down to 6 important areas that I think solo agers need to focus on, but I know Marianne mentioned 8 earlier, so I think 8 is probably right too, but there's 6 in there that are key. And then I also have a free worksheet to help you get organized, a solo ager organizer, to help you get that emergency contact information that I want you to have on your fridge, to help you get that together, and to also help you get all this other information that I wish I had, and all these stories I told you about when I was appointed as healthcare proxy or power of attorney for somebody and knew nothing about them. I wish somebody had handed me this 9-page worksheet and said, well, here's all the information you need about Mary, Oh, this is great, But so I have a free worksheet you can download on soloallies.com. Rachel has 2 samples over there. We're happy to give them out to somebody. Also, lastly, I am rolling out, technology has changed the world around us, and I have created a do-it-yourself estate plan for solo agers that I think will really help people a lot. The questions are very unique to solo agers, and the documents that it produces are meant to support solo agers. And it is meant to be an affordable option for people who may not want to go and see a lawyer. The only thing about it is it does involve a little bit, involves a little bit more work on your part. There's an online questionnaire it walks you through, then it produces the documents, but you do need to execute the documents on your own, where you need to have 2 witnesses and a notary present when you sign. I give you all the instructions and all of that. And actually, that's all on the website, that you can sign up to do that. And so today, Rachel and I are going to have a raffle if anybody's interested in entering it, or we're going to give away just 1 free of this do-yourself. If anybody wants to enter the raffle, they can Rachel will give you a number. I don't know. We'll figure it out later, but we're happy to give away 1 of those today if somebody would like it, if you'd like. And it's free. There's no cost. Sure. Okay, so what it is if you go to the soloallies.com website, you'll see that Solo Allies focuses on planning and people. And under the planning section, you need these legal documents, right? So you need a will, a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, and the raffle. We've created this link for you to start working on your do-it-yourself solo aging to create your own legal documents. And we do charge, it's $599 for that package, but we're going to give away 1 for free today if you guys want. If anybody wants to enter the raffle, okay? Usually if you go to a lawyer, just to let you know, estate planning packages in our office for a single person usually start at about $1,000, okay? if you get everything you need, but that doesn't include a trust. This plan doesn't include a trust. It's a fairly basic estate plan, but it has a lot of things in there meant for solo agers, and I think it's a really good start for somebody who's, fairly tech savvy, has a printer, knows how, I walk you through, I've got a lot of videos in there, articles you're going to read along the way, because you kind of have to educate yourself a little bit, because you're doing it yourself. It's like, I don't know, sometimes you do something yourself and you have to learn a little bit about it as you go. So, but it probably takes about an hour to do it, to produce the documents you need. And then it provides all the instructions about how to execute them. And we do offer, if you need some guidance or something, you can schedule some time with us, and it will be way cheaper than if you came, well, maybe not way cheaper, but it will be cheaper, okay? And so I would just like to leave you with this. You want to plan for your future? Identify people who are going to be there for you. Okay, and that is hard. I feel like that's probably the hardest part, So, I hope you hope you have somebody in mind. If you don't, I feel like get guidance. Okay, create your legal planning documents. Make sure the people you chose know your wishes and they know where they can find this information when they need it. Every year, look at your plan and make sure it's still good. And if any circumstances change it. And if you need tools or guidance, you can go to soloallies.com. That's what we're trying to do, is give you tools, guidance. This coaching service is going to be a fairly new thing for us, but it's really meant, for somebody who just says, I am completely overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I've got nobody. I don't even know who to write down. We can try to help you come up with ideas. We can try to help you connect with some of the professionals that we know that serve as fiduciary, that we really have faith in, who we know are good people. So let me just see. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Last thing, this is my book that I hope to be finally launching at some point. And if you would like to know when it's ready, you can give Rachel your email, and we'll email you when the book is ready, okay? So, thank you. Are you ready? Okay, sorry. The best way to predict the future is to create it, Abraham Lincoln. I don't want people lying awake at night worrying about what's going to happen to them. I want to make sure that you're prepared, and so hopefully this is helpful today. Okay, and these are, the businesses I'm affiliated with. Okay, hi.
You mentioned having a healthcare proxy can be far away, but how far is too far?
I would say too far is probably like another country.
The West Coast,
if you call them up and say, look, I'd want you to be my healthcare proxy, do you want to do this? If they think that, ideally you probably would want them to show up and come here and see what's going on.
To that, do you service the South Shore?
Oh, too far for you?
No. Do you, with
Yeah.
your service, do you service the South Shore? Like Canton or Hingham?
Maybe, yeah. Hey, for me, I live actually in Boston, so Hingham's not far. I think
And
that's.
we have an estate plan and a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney made by a lawyer that I didn't really like.
Yep.
So what questions do I need to ask him / maybe I come to you? Could you review what we have?
Yeah, we can always review what you have, and just because you don't like them doesn't mean the documents aren't good. They're probably good, but
He's supposed to show up and be my healthcare proxy, though.
yeah, that's one thing. If you're in the hospital, you don't want somebody showing up who you don't really like.
Well, I don't even know if he would, so what do I
Yeah.
need to ask him? To
Yeah,
make sure
you know what?
that-
I've seen it time and time again. These lawyers say, "Oh yeah, I'll be your power of attorney. I'll sure," and then time comes and they're nowhere to be found. They don't want to be involved. I feel like I actually care about this. I care about people.
So
Like,
we can set up a time to come see
yes,
you?
exactly.
Okay.
We do a free consultation, so you can just call me and we can Usually I do the free consultation by like phone or Zoom. We just go over, you know, what it involves. And then if you're interested, then we usually come in, sit down. I gather all the information I need from you. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Hold on one second. I just
Oh,
want to
oh, I'm
say
so
we're
sorry.
recording this.
sorry.
So we're going to ask you to wait. Wait till
Okay.
you have a microphone.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
How much does it cost to have a power of attorney as a lawyer?
Yes, okay, that's a good question. So it is not cheap to have a lawyer as a power of attorney. With our Aging Allies program, we, I mean, depending, if you have us down as healthcare proxy power of attorney and personal representative of your estate, we charge $100 per month just to be kind of like in the loop and in the waiting and be there. Yeah, but then when you actively need me to act, we charge by the hour. So, yeah, by the time we spend, yep. And right now, our hourly rate is $3.95 an hour for attorney time, $1.95 an hour for assistant time. I know, a lot of people, I hear that a lot. I hear, oh, wow. But the bottom line is it's not for everybody. And so a lot of people are going to say, wow, it's not for me. And I get that. And that's why I want you to be creative and find these other people. But there are plenty of people out there who said to me too, wow, thank you. Wow, I know I can count on you. And to me, that price that I pay for that is worth it because it's somebody who I feel like I know what's going to happen. So it's not for everybody. And I mean, I wish I could charge less, but as a lawyer, it's like that's what it is, you know? And so, I mean, geriatric care managers, as far as I don't know any geriatric care manager that will be your healthcare proxy. I don't. I mean, I hope it changes. That's why I'm saying we need advocacy, we need fiduciaries, but that's all I can do right now. And maybe you think it's too expensive, but it might not be for you, you know? Yeah.
If a geriatric, if the healthcare proxy, no,
Okay.
if the healthcare proxy is only activated when a doctor says they can't communicate with you to learn your wishes, it seems like, why does the healthcare proxy have to be there in person? They could do it on the phone with the doctor.
Yep, they don't have to be there in person. I think the hard part about I guess technology's changing. You know, people can bring in a Zoom to a hospital bed and say, and doctors can give you a really clear picture about what's going on. So I think you're right. They don't necessarily have to be there. It's not a requirement. And if the person that you have, that you count on, lives in California, and that's really who you feel like you're going to count on, I think it's fine. I think just maybe at the end of the road, you want to maybe just have one local person in case, or, you know, have a resource that your niece in California can connect with, a friend who can just say, okay, I just went to the hospital and I see what's going on, and this is actually what I see, you know? Yeah, I think that's okay. Okay, yeah.
Just a quick question. You said have a plan for your pet. What kind of plan can one make for one's pet?
Yes, okay. I think the best thing you can do for your pet is you can have an emergency contact information. Like on your emergency contact information form that you have on your fridge, just think about at least put down your pet's vet's name. Put down, does your pet have any, like almost you would if you have a kid. Like, does your pet have any allergies? Does your pet have any food? They only eat a certain kind of food. I can tell you a story about a pet. Well, if anybody wants to hear my pet story, they can come talk to me, but I've been involved with some pets. So basically, plan for your pet. And I think, you know, if you just for example, in our Aging Allies program, I want to know about your pet. And I want to be, if I find out you're in the hospital, I want to know where the pet is going to go or what's going to happen. I mean, I know we've taken fish. Unfortunately, I happen to be allergic to cats and dogs, so I'm not taking home any pets. But we will come up with a plan for the pet, and that's always, if I know you have a pet, that pet is going to be top on my mind. You'll be higher on my mind, but I'm going to be caring about the pet a lot too. Yeah. And I mean, whenever possible, pets can live in assisted living facilities. They can live in a lot of places. I want you to be with your pet, you know? Okay.
Just a quick pet story. My sister died a couple months ago, and she had hired a dog walker who loved her dog. And so the dog walker and my sister agreed that if anything happened to my sister, that the dog walker would take her.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So-
Yep. Yeah, I like that. Okay. No, I'm sorry.
You mentioned professional fiduciary or attorney, and so I'm just sort of confused about what would professional fiduciary cover?
Yep. So, I mean, I don't, like, professional, the term fiduciary really refers to who are you choosing to be your healthcare proxy, your power of attorney, the executor of your estate, or like a trustee, okay? And so, like, there are professional trustees out there, usually like kind of more corporate, like banks or something. I mean, I'm not really aware of any professional fiduciaries here in Massachusetts. I mean, yep. I understand what you're saying. So she said, I thought there were financial advisors that are called professional fiduciaries, and they have a duty to act in your best financial interest. Yes, but they are not going to be your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, your executor of your estate, or the trustee. I think that's a term they use in the financial services industry to differentiate financial advisors who are like maybe fee-only, or like they have a fiduciary responsibility to act in your best interest rather than to try to just invest in things that are in their best interest. But it's not really the same thing. I mean, I could see how confusing it would be, but they're not going to show up for you at the hospital or do anything like that. Yeah.
Reminded me, you said earlier you would not advise a financial advisor be your power of attorney.
No.
What is that based on?
In my experience, I just feel like a financial advisor should not be your power of attorney because they are there to make investments, and they should be impartial. And where they're managing your money, it just seems like they might manage your money in a certain way that would benefit them. I mean, even if they are the
What
yeah.
if they're fiduciary?
yeah, but I just
And
think
you've
it's
known them for 30
yeah.
years? Or
I mean, you could ask them, but I don't know. I'm a little leery of that. I feel like I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's got their own cup of tea. Maybe. I mean, maybe I just for some reason don't like the idea of it. But I feel like it's just something about it just doesn't seem right to me.
So I understand that power of attorney
Oh, did you?
ends the day you die. Oh,
Yeah, that's a
sorry.
good question. Yeah.
My understanding is that power of attorney ends the day you die. So while you're alive, the power of attorney acts for your financial affairs. But the day you die, then what, your executor takes over? Is that how it works?
Yes, this is a very good question. So power of attorney ends at death. It ends at death. And at that point, we get into after death, which I didn't go into at all today just because of the title of the program. But your executor, which in Massachusetts we also call personal, it's actually the legal term in Massachusetts is personal representative. Executor, it means the same thing. That person gets appointed by the court to manage your estate, to collect everything that was in your name alone at the time of your death, just in your name alone, not jointly held, no beneficiary designation. And then they distribute the assets according to your wishes. So you're going to find a lot of information about probate, avoiding probate, should you avoid probate, all kinds of things like that, like on our websites, okay? Because, probate, I personally don't think probate is the worst thing in the world for some people, but, it is what it is. You can learn more about it if you go to the website.
But you'd have a revocable trust to avoid probate, basically.
Yes, there's other ways to avoid probate too.
Yeah.
Beneficiary designations, joint accounts, different titles. So, yep, I have a couple YouTube videos on my website and articles and things. So, Or I can talk to you after, too, if you want to. Okay, any other questions? I guess I went over, sorry. Okay. Okay, well, you guys are a fantastic group. I really appreciate it. Thank you all very much. I'll just be over here for, well, actually, do you want me to leave when you guys do your discussion? Okay, okay, okay. Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, so good. Glad you were all here. Thank you, Kathy. You're amazing.
Thank you so much.
You can put that on the, right on the stage. On the stage. It's a big word. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming, and we take a quick short break, and we'll be here till 3:30 for anybody who wants to come back and continue a conversation with and from each other, of like learning from and with each other. We're happy to do that. But I just want to say thank you, Kathy. This was just fantastic. Really so thorough, and so much care and service and tending to the older adults and solo agers. So thank you.